Hey, we are changing the world one podcast at a time, and today we interviewed a very special person. He has unique perspectives on politics and the world and how America works, and it was very interesting to work with him because I consider myself quite the patriot. Not the negative stereotypes one may associate with a patriot, but I definitely do love America. And he doesn't necessarily hate America, but he has interesting views on how things should work here. I'm a fan of capitalism. He is not. So I'm always here to get educated. So check out his stuff, check out his content on TikTok, check out his Instagram and things of that nature. He was very well spoken. It was a pleasure to speak to him. Right. Also, since you're here, just subscribe. You know, you listen this far in, just subscribe. It's harmless and it's free. And yeah, help me out. I'm trying to change the world, and I want you along here with me. Love you. Welcome back to another episode of Important Miscellaneous Talks. I am your host, Glassfield Crossfield, and we're changing the world one podcast at a time. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, good morning. My name's Troy Matthews. People may know me on TikTok and Instagram as KeepTroyBlue. It's nice to be here.
Got you. So where'd you get that name from?
Yeah, that's what people always ask me. So my name's Troy, obviously, and I'm from Lake Tahoe, California, and the slogan for Lake Tahoe is "Keep Tahoe Blue." So I thought I would just sort of incorporate that. People always think I'm from like Troy, New York, or Troy, Michigan, or something like that, but that's not true.
So talk a little bit about your upbringing and what sort of things led to your thought process that you have today.
Sure. Yeah, believe it or not, I was raised in a pretty religious household, middle class, but my parents were both teachers. And I was raised with, a real sense of, community, the importance of education, the importance of looking out for, people that aren't as fortunate as we were, growing up. I was, again, raised in a very religious household. I was taught the, social justice, peace, helping thy neighbor aspects of Christianity more so than the hating gays aspects of Christianity. So I really was raised with that and took that to heart. I'm not particularly religious anymore, but I did take that to heart, and that's sort of the household that I was raised in. I've been involved in activism my entire life, and really just sort of in the last 2 years, I think, has really sort of solidified my stance as sort of a left wing activist. And hopefully, my content on the internet is meant to be educational. Sometimes it can be a little rough and confrontational, but hopefully people are learning a little bit from it.
So if you don't mind me asking, what turns you away from religion?
I think, well, it was a couple things, actually. It was just growing up. I almost became a pastor. I almost went to a religious college to become like a youth pastor. What turned me off really was the continual movement of the American evangelical church to the right, away from, like I said, issues that I cared about, which was social justice, helping the less fortunate, service to community, service to your fellow men and women, more towards right-wing activism, being sort of a base for the Republican Party. That really turned me off. And, also just sort of the intellectual side of it, realizing that, my own belief system had changed as I'd gotten older. But what really killed it for me was, and I always found comfort in religion, even, throughout college. But what really killed it for me was just the evangelical support of Donald Trump and the continued support of, the Republican Party amongst evangelical Christians. And it's really, the evangelical church is really not what it should be right now. It's just a political arm of the Republican Party, and I can't associate myself with that.
Got you. Would you say I have a hunch to your answer to this, but would you say that your family approved the lifestyle that you have today?
I think so. My mom is a huge fan, which I'm really surprised because my mom is a pretty, liberal politically, but also sort of conservative socially. And but my mom really loves my stuff, and is probably my biggest fan, I think. So yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Did you lose a lot of friends when you decided to choose the path that you chose?
No, I don't think so. I think I there's certain people that I don't show my stuff to, namely my in-laws, just because they're more on the right side of things, and we try to avoid political discussions as much as possible, because they're my in-laws and I have to respect them. But no, it was more just kind of, it was a secret life that I was leading. I had a
Mm.
job and friends, and I was involved in the community, and nobody really knew that this was sort of a side thing that I had going on, until I kind of blew up on TikTok, and then people sort of started to find me, and my friends were been pretty impressed, actually. Some of my friends are not political, so I don't think they're as interested, but my political friends actually, I think, were pretty excited by what I was talking about, what I'm doing with my life.
So most of your friends share your political views?
Yeah, I think so. To varying degrees. We're all pretty, pretty left wing people. We're all sort of uh, college educated, professional level people. But we also sort of, we also all sort of fall on the left side of the spectrum in terms of how we view, politics in the United States.
Would you say that um what do you think is the biggest problem that America faces today?
Uh, there's a lot. I
Give me
mean,
top three.
okay. Well, number one, I think, has to be just our rampant poverty and our rampant wealth inequality. The gap between the wealthy and the poor in this country is growing exponentially. It's worse. We have worse wealth inequality now than they did prior to the French Revolution. We've effectively lost the American middle class in this country.
Mm.
Folks are either getting wealthier and wealthier, or getting poorer and poorer, and that's really a result of the loss of unions in this country, the slashing of wages, trickle down economics since Ronald Reagan. We are a very corporate, pro business society. We're not a worker society like we used to be, and workers are getting screwed. Low income workers are, their wages aren't going up, despite the fact that the cost of living goes up every single year. Wages have stagnated since the early 70s. So American families are being pinched more and more and more every year. We have 75% of American families living paycheck to paycheck. So that's one emergency away from,
Mm.
facing poverty. And it's no wonder that we have a crisis of poverty in this country. So that's a major aspect. Wages have got to go up. We've got to get support for American workers. We've got to get support for American families again. Um, I would say two, just with what's going on right now, in the divisions in this country, the rampant, uh, you know, increased violence. January 6th was a huge issue. We have folks in this country that are now taking their extreme beliefs to such a place that they're willing to commit violence against their fellow Americans on both sides, to be fair. But we need to hash out our stuff. We need to come together again as a people. It's getting out of hand. There's a lot of divisions in this country that are very deeply rooted. We need to work that out before it comes to violence. And I think three has to be, just the ongoing racial division in this country. We've never sorted out our issues with race in this country, and it's really fueling a lot. It is what's fueling a lot of these divisions. We need to have a racial reckoning in this country. We need to, and white people need to take ownership of this. This can no longer be an issue for BIPOC people, people of color. They can this has to be seen as a white issue, not a BIPOC issue. White people have to take the lead on this issue. We've got to do better. We've got to hold white people accountable for the fact that racism is still an issue in 2022 in this country. And we have to, do the best we can. We have to do the best we can. We have to listen. We have to learn. We have to read every book we can. And we have to understand the history of racial divisions in this country. And we have to do better. That's, we don't have a choice anymore. We're at a reckoning point with that.
What do you think would be the biggest solution to poverty in America?
I think, well, there's a number of solutions to poverty in America. The easiest one is just to increase the minimum wage. If you increase the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage is only $7.25 an hour. That hasn't been increased since 2009. That equates to roughly 15 grand a year. Nowhere in the United States can you survive on 15 grand a year. You can barely survive on 20 grand a year, 30 grand a year. $15 an hour is roughly 27K a year after tax. Where can you survive in the United States on that? So, if you raise the minimum wage, that's going to cause other wages to increase. You're going to see more people getting more money. We have to raise wages to keep up with the cost of living. We just haven't been doing that. People will say that will affect businesses, but businesses are raking in record profits. A lot of small businesses are still paying their people very well. It's sort of a myth that we can't pay our workers more. The other thing to do is just increase the level of how much we care about each other in the society, and we do that through social programs. A lot of like what you see in Europe, we are very, for some reason, we're a rugged individualist society, but in the wrong direction. We're a rugged individualist society for corporations and billionaires. We're a rugged individual society for poor people. We're a socialist, sort of take care of everybody society for the billionaires. So the billionaires get bailed out. The billionaires get bailed out by the government all the time. They're supported by politicians in Washington. It's the average working people that are not supported. We need to have a more robust social safety net in this country, like they do in Europe and other places. We need to have universal health care. We need to have universal education. We need to, just increase the amount of support that we're giving to working families in this country to take the burden off of what it means to work in this country, what it means to raise children in this country, and how hard people have to work just to barely scrape by. We're not saying let's give everybody handouts. We're not saying let's give everybody a free ride to sit on their butts all day and do nothing. What we're saying is we pay taxes to the government. Our taxes right now are going to military and bailing out corporations, among Social Security and other things. Let's refocus some of that money on actually helping out American citizens, and the best way to do that right now is to secure universal health care and get people access to medicine that isn't going to make them broke just because they get sick.
Got you, got you. Interesting, interesting. Me personally, I'm not a fan of free healthcare, just because like I know some people in Canada. They told me some stories about it. How typically the places are overcrowded, the doctors are overworked and underpaid, and sometimes it's so overcrowded that they don't get the quality healthcare or attention that they deserve. And you got to schedule certain things months in advance just for something as simple as a flu shot. So that's some of the reasons why I think. But I'm here to be educated, so.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. No, it's and that is, it's not to say that these systems are perfect like they have in
Right.
Canada and in UK and France and all over Europe and Australia and all this. It's not to say that they function perfectly, but they function better than a system where we have insurance companies as the middleman, taking in profits that are dictating which doctors you can see, which treatments you can get. These decisions should be left up to the patient and their doctor. A lot of what you're seeing in Canada, there is a lot of support for the Canadian healthcare system too. You're not seeing in Canada, you're not seeing a movement even on the conservative side to necessarily overturn their healthcare system and replace it with an American style model, you're seeing, folks wanting it to be more funded. They want more funds to go into their public healthcare system to deal with some of these wait times. And remember that we have wait times in the United States as well. If you're going to wait to see a specialist, a couple of months to see a specialist in the United States too. It's a matter of understanding that, you're going to pay a little bit more in taxes, depending on how much money you make. But then when you go to see the doctor, you're not going to get a bill. If you get into an accident, you're not going to get a bill at the hospital. If you give birth, you're not going to get a bill from the hospital. So, and if you factor out the expense related to that, paying a little bit more in taxes, but not having hospital bills, in the long run, you're actually going to be saving money by doing that. And that's why the United States spends more money on healthcare than almost more than any other developed nation on the planet, and yet we only rank 37th in healthcare in the entire world. Every other nation below us, 36-1, has some sort of universal healthcare, and they save money doing that. So that's sort of the position that where I come out of.
Interesting. What would you say to someone who doesn't want the increased taxes? What would you say to someone who just, I want to pay for me and my family and that's it? And
I
also,
would
I'm sorry to cut you off.
go ahead.
Also, in the free healthcare system, do we have a choice of whether or not we want that free healthcare? Can we still keep our insurance? Because I'll be all for free healthcare if you give me the choice of, all right, I can do insurance company or I can do free healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the public option model that we were floating under Obama. That's sort of been brought up in the last election, as opposed to like the Medicare for all model, which is what like Bernie and the more left wing people wanted. In the public option model, we're going to maintain the private health insurance companies and basically just give you the option to keep your current insurance, or you can opt for like a government insurance program. That's that system.
Okay.
Which would be totally cool. That would be totally cool.
Yeah,
What's that?
I agree.
Yeah. So in other words, you have a public system like public education versus private education. You have a public system to compete with the private system, and folks can choose which one that they want. What was your first question again? Insurance. What do I say to people who don't, who only want to pay for themselves? I would say that, if you look at the insurance system, you have to understand how insurance works, and that you are paying for other people right now in the current model, in the current insurance system. What you pay to the insurance company does not just cover your care. You're paying into an insurance pool that's covering everybody else that's in that insurance pool. So if you're a healthy person and you're never sick, but you pay for health insurance, you're actually paying for other people to draw money out of that pool. So what I would say to those folks is, I totally understand. Nobody wants to spend more taxes. Nobody wants to pay for things that they might not use, but just recognize that you currently are paying for other people's care. The only difference in our system, when you get rid of those insurance companies, you're paying for everybody's care, but you're also not paying for CEO salaries. So, if you're paying for private insurance, you're also paying for the employees at that health insurance company. You're paying their salaries. So we're saying, just cut out the middleman. Everybody pays, everybody pays, and then everybody benefits from the system is the best way that I can pitch it to folks. And just recognizing that, that's how insurance works. This system just makes, our public system just makes the public system the health insurance company, and cuts out the CEO salaries, essentially.
Got you. See, this is why I'm here. So, what would you what are your comments on Biden's presidency thus far? Do you approve or?
I do approve. It's tricky. It's tricky. Well, we're 1 year into the Biden presidency, so it's a year and a couple months. So it's tricky to make an in-depth assessment. I think, like any other president, 1 year in, he's had some successes, he's had some failures. I think he's been screwed over by a recalcitrant Congress that really hasn't been able to pass anything on his agenda. So he really hasn't been able to get anything done that he came in to get done. I would like to see him be tougher about that. I think Biden's always kind of been a really, Biden's style is to be sort of like, come on guys, like, let's work together. Let's work together and sort of, be nice about it. I'd like to see somebody who's really like able to take ownership of all
Like
that.
Trump maybe?
No, I don't see Trump as being very effective at all. I see, Trump causing a tremendous amount of division in this country. I don't see that Trump was able to get necessarily much of anything done in his 4 years, other than a tax cut for the wealthiest. Biden at least has passed the American Rescue Plan, which staved off economic disaster, passed a COVID relief plan, which included a child tax credit, which pulled 30%, which ended 30% of child poverty in this country. That program has since gone away because it was expired because, it didn't pass the Senate. So those folks are now struggling with those issues again. But Biden has been able to get a lot done in his tenure, and ending the war in Afghanistan. Could basically going along with Trump's deal with the Taliban, that could have been smoother, absolutely. But we're out of Afghanistan, thankfully, after 20 years. So yeah, I mean, the jury's still out. We'll see. We'll see. We still have another 3 years left in his term. So I mean, anything could happen in 3 years.
Do you approve of how he's handling the Ukraine situation?
Yeah, I do, because I don't see any alternative. I mean, if the other alternative would just be direct conflict with Russia, and that would trigger World War III because of our NATO alliance. We can't just fight Russia, because that would obligate every other nation in NATO to go and fight Russia, which is not something that we want to do. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate for the Ukrainians. It's tremendously unfortunate. The Ukrainians have kind of been left out to dry by the entire world. But Ukraine is not in NATO. We don't have any security obligations to Ukraine. We've sent them a lot of equipment, a lot of training, a lot of money, and that's kind of the best we can do. And they're badass. I mean, they've been fighting like hell. They've been holding off the Russian military the best they can. The Russian military is a much larger military, but the Ukrainians have really been holding their own. And then the other thing is just sanctions against Russia, and the Russian sanctions have been pretty effective at really crippling their economy. You're starting to see the Russian oligarchs and Putin and his inner circle feeling the heat of that. Will it have a tremendous effect on them? It's only time will tell. But it is having an effect on the Russian economy. And so I don't know that Biden can do much more other than team up with other world leaders in enforcing those sanctions, making sure that everybody is uniform on not doing business with Russia, really making sure that we're punishing Russia economically for this invasion, which was totally unprovoked, and just completely unnecessary, and really just a tragedy, just a human rights tragedy that there's just absolutely no reason for it. But other than sanctions to Russia and military and diplomatic aid to Ukraine, I don't see that there's much more that we can do unless we're willing to just engage in direct conflict with Russia, which, frankly, would result in World War III. And I don't think anybody wants to see that.
Same. So would you agree that a lot of Americans have a lot of first world problems?
Yes, I think America is probably the most pampered society on the planet. Um, we like to think of ourselves as like a militaristic society. We're not. We have no appetite for total war. We can't even really get our folks to sacrifice small things, like wearing a mask in the store for 10 minutes to help control the spread of a virus. I can't imagine what our ancestors are thinking. Our ancestors who had to go without electricity because they didn't want to turn the lights on so the Japanese bombers couldn't see the cities on the West Coast. Saving their urine, sacrificing clothing, sacrificing meals for war. Our society is not prepared to do any of that. We like to say we support the troops. We like to say that we have troops in the field somewhere, so we can say that we're patriots. We say we support the troops, but we don't actually know what it is to sacrifice for war like they do in Europe. We've never actually, we've been bombed at Pearl Harbor. We've been bombed on September 11th. Other than those two instances, we've never really faced the shock of war on our shores. We don't know what it is to be bombed, to be involved in a direct military conflict with another armed nation. And as a result, we're pampered as a society. And you look at what the Ukrainians are going through, that is what war looks like. That's what real war looks like. And Americans are not prepared for that. I'm not sure if that's the answer you were looking for, but I do think that Americans are just a very, very pampered society.
I definitely agree, and a lot of people don't realize the real hard-hitting problems because they're born and raised in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with
Right.
saying that we have so many first world problems, it leads a lot of people to believe that we basically don't have any problems. It's far from the
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's yeah, I mean, we have to always remember this, the struggles that they have in certain other nations around the world, and always just kind of be grateful for what we do have. The fact that we've been handed such a strong society economically, and the access that we have to technology and to running water and to electricity, and
truth.
just the functions of society that we do have. And again, the fact that we're not, geographically, we're isolated from the rest of the world, so it's much, much harder for Russia to bomb the United States, or it was for Germany to bomb the United States in World War II. We have oceans on both sides of us. We're protected geographically, and so we've been sort of a sheltered. We're the Shire, basically. We're a sheltered society. We're protected from a lot of the armed conflicts that have been going on in the rest of the world.
What are your thoughts on capitalism? I see you had a lot to say about that on your page.
I am not. I'm not a communist. I'll say that. I do believe capitalism can work. I do believe that capitalism is a functioning. It can be a functional economic system. I believe in is a mixed model. I believe in a mix I believe in a mix of a market economy, and a social economy and a public economy. I call myself a democratic socialist. Essentially, what that means is that I believe in economic freedom as well as political freedom. I believe that it's interesting that we call ourselves a free people, and yet when we go to work, we are completely surrendering ourselves to the tyranny of the ownership class of industry in our country. I believe in employee ownership. I believe in elected CEOs. I believe in employee benefits. If you had employee ownership of companies in this country, you do not get the destruction of the manufacturing sector like we saw in the 90s. Employees are not going to vote to send their own job overseas, for example. So I do believe in, I'm not calling, myself and people that think like me are not calling for the end of capitalism. I think capitalism has a very valid place, but I would like to see more traditional capitalism. I would like to see more, I believe in small business. I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in, people who have a really great idea should be able to monetize that idea. I think that's totally great. And that really benefits society. Where do you get into sticky situations is when you have massive corporations that operate above the law, employ large sectors of people, underpay them, exploit them for their labor, and basically have a corruption of our democratic system where these folks can get away with whatever they want. And we have working families struggling in this country. And like I said, 75% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, even though we will see the first trillionaire in our lifetime. We have people worth $500 billion in our society. We have $32 trillion worth of wealth in our society. We will see the first trillionaire in our lifetime, and yet we have kids going to bed hungry at night. There's no reason for that. We live in a post-scarcity society. We have enough resources to take care of everybody. There is no reason for children to live in poverty in our society. Poverty happens in societies where there aren't enough resources for everybody. That's true poverty, when there's only enough resources for one block of society and everyone else just has to starve. That's not what's going on in the United States of America. We have enough resources to at least provide everybody with subsistence, basic level dignity, basic level humanity. And we're just not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that because we believe in the billionaire's right to be a billionaire and face minimal taxation, while we tax the working people and pay them starvation wages. So I just think that the model that we have of capitalism is not true capitalism. It's corporatism. It's a bastardized version of capitalism that's been growing over the last century. And we need to get back to true capitalism, which is more supportive of workers and more supportive of providing a benefit to society as a whole rather than just to a few, if that makes sense.
What would you say to someone who believes that, it's not the rich people's obligation to help anyone who are under them? But I think you don't have a problem with rich people. It's more so just the how the money is being used, how it's being allocated, correct?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with people getting rich. Look, we've always had rich people. We've always had rich people in this society. People were very rich, in the turn of the 20th century, in the 19th century, in the 60s, leading up until the 80s, which is when it really changed. We've always had rich people. I don't have a problem with people being rich. I like money too. I like to have nice things. I own a house.
Yeah.
I like to be able to provide my daughter with a comfortable life. The question is, how much do you really need? Do you need $500 billion? If Jeff Bezos spent, Jeff Bezos has more money than he can spend literally in his entire life. There is no physical way that Jeff Bezos could buy every house on the planet and still be a billionaire. There is no conceivable way that Jeff Bezos can spend all his money in his lifetime. So what does he need all that money for? To go to space? Do we really need billionaires in space when we have children starving in the United States of America? Listen, I have no problem with people having money and being rich. In the 60s, you had CEOs making 25 times what their lowest paid worker was making in the 60s, 25 times more money. And now it's 400 times. The CEOs are making 400 times what their lowest paid worker is making. And the lowest paid workers are making a lower effective wage today than they were in 1968. Even though the wages have gone up in terms of inflation, they're actually getting paid less today than they were in 1968. So let's at least right the ship. Let's at least have a more fair economic system. I don't plan on taking all of Bezos's money away. You can still be a billionaire, but does he need to be that rich? Does he need to have that much money that he cannot spend in a lifetime? I don't know. I just don't see it. But again, I don't, I don't have, again, I'm not, I don't want everybody to be poor. Like I said, I have a house, I have a daughter. I want to take care of my daughter. I want her to have nice things. I just think, how much is too much? How much is enough? How much is enough for these folks?
I agree with you on that, but I think, well, America sells this kind of image that the wealth is unlimited here. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you look up at someone like a Jeff Bezos, uh, who you can view in reality of someone of that great wealth magnitude,
Mm-hmm.
it may inspire people.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it may be
Inspiration or feeding kids, like
again. Yeah, I mean, again, inspire. I would hope that it would inspire people to do great things. I would hope that it would inspire people to create something that's really good for our society. I hope it's not just inspiring people to get rich just for the sake of getting rich. It's we have a lot of people in this country who are making money off of money, who make money in speculating and day trading and just buying and selling assets and companies. They aren't really putting in the work. I mean, do we value work and labor as a society? We say we do. We say work really hard and you can achieve your dreams. Well, a lot of these, poor people, a lot of these low income people work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Some of them have 2 jobs. Some of them have 3 jobs. I mean, they're working really, really hard and they're not really seeing any advantage to that when we compare it to the stock trader and the day trader and the speculator who's making money off of other people's money. They're not really putting in work. They're just reaping all the rewards. And yet we're willing to say as a society, that rich guy who got rich day trading on the stock market, we value that person more than we value the person at McDonald's who's flipping burgers. So it's a matter of like, what are you willing to do for the money? And do we value labor as society, or do we just value wealth? Because if we just value wealth, then we need to stop telling people to work hard, because you're simultaneously valuing wealth over labor and then telling people that they're just not working hard enough. So something's got to give. Something's got to give.
Got you. Which country is the ideal model that the United States should emulate in order to improve?
I just got this question on live the other night. There's a lot. I mean, uh, there isn't like necessarily one country that we should be like, oh, we should do that. It's more just recognizing that other countries have very functional, stable democracies, very functional republics, just as much freedom as we have, but they also provide their citizens with basic human dignity. They also provide their citizens with universal health care, universal education, high wages, support for workers, support for unions. They provide these benefits to their citizens. And it's not impacting their freedom at all. They don't live in some sort of statist dictatorship. They have just as much freedom as we do. And I would point to, again, Canada, the nations in Europe, South Korea, Japan. A lot of the Asian tigers are serious capitalist societies making tons of money, and at the same time are able to take care of their citizens in a way that we just don't in the United States. Like South Korea has universal healthcare. Japan has universal healthcare. These are not communist societies. These are not even really socialist societies. These are extreme capitalist nations, but they still recognize the value in taking care of their people and taking care of their workers. So, any one of those, any society, I think, that's not authoritarian, that still respects the rule of law, that still believes in republics, believes in democracy, but is willing to do a little bit more to support their people and their populace, rather than just spending all their money on the military and bombing the Middle East every 20 years.
I would say with those countries that you name have a fraction of the population of the United States, and I think a lot of them, it goes back to the previous problems that you mentioned with the division, especially racially divided, where it's much easier for your country to get along where 99% of your country is Asian. You have the same religion as well. So
Mhm.
I think, it's layers to this. So
No, I mean, that's a very good. No, listen, that is an excellent point. Like, we can't discount the fact that, America is, or United States is what, the third largest population?
yes,
Fifth or
third,
third?
third.
Third, yeah.
China, India, then
China and India, right? Huge geographic, So if if you are comparing the United States to, say, Europe, where we have an entire nation the size of, Ohio, yeah, it is a little bit more challenging. That being said, I don't know that we should just give up. We have problems we should fix.
Which group would you say is the most discriminated against in the United States?
Which group is most discriminated? Well, at the moment, it's Black trans women. Historically, it's been Black women, Black gay men. I would say at the moment it's Black trans women. Just if you define discrimination, I would say, just in terms of the amount of violence, the just sheer amount of violence that Black trans women are facing. There's still rampant discrimination of Asians in this country. There's still rampant discrimination of Muslims in this country, of sort of Arabic and Persian peoples in this country. But if you're defining discrimination as just the fact that you're not safe in your own society, then currently I would say it's Black trans women that would be the most discriminated against.
What would you say to someone who believes that a white person can't be Black Lives Matter?
That a white person can't be in Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, like can't support the movement, or just disregarding the support in total.
I would say if you're a Black person, if you're a person of color saying that, I would say you have every damn right to say that. I think I consider myself to be a white ally. I do what I can. I support Black Lives Matter, but I will never know that struggle. I will never know what it means to be Black in America, and I recognize that. And I have to take people on a person to person basis. Some people of color, some Black people in the United States want white support. They want white allies. They want us to lend our voices to the struggle, and I plan to do that as best as I possibly can. Some Black folks in this country don't want white folks involved. They don't want white. They don't believe. They believe that white folks have had their chance, and they just don't believe in white allies. They don't believe that white people can be a support, and that's totally fair. That is totally fair. I have nothing to say to those people. All I can say is that I try. I do the best that I can. And it's a constant learning process. As I started this by saying, is that the best thing for white folks to do is just to constantly be learning and to listen instead of talk. Just stop talking. And as a person who just does nothing but talk, I recognize the irony of that. But I need to shut up occasionally too, and just listen when people are talking instead of trying to white-splain everything, trying to pretend like we understand what it is to be Black in America, because we don't. So I think it's very legitimate to have certain BIPOC individuals who don't want whites in the movement. I completely understand that.
Well, Mr. Troy, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. It was great. It was a lot of fun talking to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.